Wielder of the Steel is the debut full-length album from London, England-based epic heavy metal band PHAÉTHON. And I would say, coming from black metal musicians who are involved in Scythian, Craven Idol, Fen and Fellwarden, and even Dissemblum, you get the sense that they were not specifically trying to infuse this record with extreme metal. This is very much intending to be maybe a bit of speed metal here and there in some of the faster movements, but this is an epic heavy metal in point and position and purpose. They're certainly aiming for a specific sound, and it works around the vocal aspirations and guitar compositions of S. Vrath, who is, again, known for his work in Scythian and Craven Idol. I think that they've mentioned Bathory, Manila Road, and several other bands that not only am I a fan of, but you can feel that in their initial EP. But the thing about that EP was that if you're looking for something that has a little bit more doom in its intent, that would be the place to go and the place to start with this band, because they don't work a lot of doom and slower motions into this full length. They've sped it up, they've incorporated quite a lot more intense guitar work, and overall the vocals lean to a deliberate sense of melodic generation. We'll get an example of that right here with the first preview song, and work from there. Merry men, the strong Sir right hand, blacked out and benighted. So there are a couple things that may be hyped up for this record, and I think the most important point is that these folks have put out pretty substantial heavy metal influenced records in terms of Forked Tongues from Craven Idol and Legend Forged in Defiance from Fellwarden more recently. I think knowing that they have that interest in heavy metal developing in this band has improved what they've done, or just it's been a boon to what they're doing in their more extreme metal projects. And so knowing they were already good at that and that those riffs had impressed me quite a bit on those past records, I went into this one with high expectations, and I think they were generally met. In terms of songwriting, this focuses much more on classic 80s heavy metal. Quite obviously, it doesn't really go into the jammed and loose feeling of a lot of early epic heavy metal. It's not exactly a Maiden clone in that sense, and it's not really rough around the edges in the way that a lot of epic heavy metal is. There are some Venom-esque moments. The vocals have kind of a late 80s Tyrant kind of sound to their diction, and like the tone of his vocals very much from the chest. It definitely has a specific sound to it, but it's not really a rawness. There isn't that a cruddiness to it, but there are some folkish kind of Thin Lizzy-esque guitar leads. There is some inspiration from Satan you can hear in some of the more speed metal influenced songs, and they've kind of covered a pretty broad range here with very detailed songs that have a lot to say and develop hooks as often as they develop big moments, big chest beating moments that are pretty much what you would want from any epic heavy metal record. Now, I don't know that I have much else to say here. A lot of this review is going over what I felt like was either a reference or what was uniquely well done, and I think every song in here was worth mentioning, and that's not common for me. I don't really think every song on every record is important or good in any sense, but in this case, they're all very good. This record doesn't really miss for me. I think that the production is done so well and the songwriting is varied enough that I was entertained every time I picked it up. And I think it's one of those records where I kind of want to keep going back to it. I want to flip through the booklet, I want to read all the lyrics, and I want to catch and pay attention to every little detail of the guitar work and the drums especially. There's just a very fine amount of work that went into this record for a debut, and you can tell they took this serious as their first big statement beyond their EP. So with a lot of those rough edges honed, but still keeping it underground and pure heavy metal, this is just like one of the best, I would say, debuts from traditional heavy metal this year. It feels like a serious product and not just the kind of usual new wave of traditional heavy metal fare. And I think that these guys really know what they're doing. They've developed a huge leap beyond their EP, which was already good. And I think that this is just one of the better records of the month. It does get a very high recommendation for me. Most of the scores being well above average. I think that the lasting value question really comes down to how much time I end up spending with the lyrics over time. Just I could see room for improvement in terms of letting a little bit more breathing room in some of these compositions and letting the album sink in a bit more. I think this was a record that I kept listening to over and over because it was so dense with ideas. It was thick with all that they'd brought into every moment of composition. If you're looking for something that is appreciably packed with ideas and all of them inspired, well, it's a very high recommendation. It's a fantastic album. It is one of the best of September, and highly recommended when it releases on September 6th here. Go ahead and check that out when it does release, and read my review if you'd like more of my thoughts.